Welcome, listener. Today we're taking a deep dive into some Buddhist teachings, the Four Noble Truths,
The Four Noble Truths.
which have resonated for over 2 millennia
2 millennia.
and offer a path to understanding and transforming suffering.
That's right.
Have you ever felt like a sense of unease?
Mm-hmm.
Like something's missing, even when things are good?
Yeah.
We're going to explore that feeling today, drawing wisdom from Thich Nhat Hanh's The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching,
Okay.
an article on mindful living from Plum Village,
Okay.
and a YouTube video on the Four Noble Truths.
The Four Noble Truths. It's interesting Buddhism doesn't shy away from suffering.
No, it doesn't.
It embraces it as a universal truth, a shared human experience.
Yeah. What really struck me was how Thich Nhat Hanh emphasizes that Buddha wasn't a god.
Right.
He was human, just like us.
He was.
He experienced the same pain, the same struggles.
Exactly.
His teachings aren't about escaping suffering. They're about acknowledging it.
Yes.
And through that, transforming it.
Absolutely. And Thich Nhat Hanh's own life was deeply marked by suffering,
He was.
witnessing war loss, the shattering of his homeland.
Wow.
He speaks openly about the lasting impact of those experiences.
He does.
You know, in his poem, The Fruit of Awareness is Ripe, he writes, "Once awareness is open, it cannot be closed."
Mm.
It's a poignant reflection on the weight of suffering,
Yeah.
how it changes us.
It's almost like once you see the depth of suffering,
Right.
you can't unsee it.
You can't.
But there's also hope in his words.
Mm.
The idea that suffering isn't the end,
Mhm.
but a beginning.
That's right. Suffering becomes the ground from which peace and liberation can grow.
The YouTube video we have dives right into the first noble truth.
Mm-hmm.
Dukkha, often translated as suffering, but encompassing a wider range of experiences: dissatisfaction, discomfort, stress.
Some more subtle forms of unease we often overlook.
Yes.
Dukkha points to the impermanence of everything. Even moments of pleasure and joy, they fade.
Yeah.
This constant change leaves us with a sense of loss. Can you relate to this, listener?
Mm.
That feeling of impermanence even when things are good. It's unsettling, isn't it?
It is. I was particularly drawn to Walpolethero's analogy of the three physicians.
Oh, yeah.
One exaggerates the illness, one downplays it. But the Buddha, like a wise physician,
As a wise physician.
offers a realistic diagnosis of the human condition
Mm.
and a genuine path to healing.
It highlights the clarity and compassion at the heart of the Buddha's teachings.
Absolutely.
He doesn't offer false hope or dwell in despair. He presents a clear-eyed view of reality.
And within that reality, we find the second noble truth,
His second noble truth.
Trishna, thirst, craving,
Mm-hmm.
the root of dukkha,
Right.
this deep yearning for things to be other than how they are.
Other than how they are.
The video gives examples. The monk seeking enlightenment, a lover longing for their beloved,
Yeah.
a person desiring wealth,
Right.
all experiencing dukkha because of that gap between desire and reality.
What's fascinating is the addictive nature of thirst. Fulfilling one desire often gives rise to new ones. It's a cycle that keeps us trapped in dukkha.
Can you, listener, identify that thirst in your own life?
Yes.
What are you clinging to?
Yeah.
Where is that gap between your desires and reality causing you pain?
Reflecting on these questions honestly is the first step towards genuine change. It's about understanding those desires, not judging ourselves for having them.
And this understanding leads us to the third noble truth,
Yes.
the possibility of ending dukkha completely. Not temporarily,
Right?
but permanently.
Permanently. This is where the concept of nirvana enters.
Nirvana.
It's the state of perfect peace, of liberation from all suffering, achieved by extinguishing that very thirst we've been discussing.
Nirvana is hard to grasp.
It is.
It feels so beyond our everyday understanding of reality and happiness.
It does. The video even acknowledges this. Trying to explain nirvana with words is like trying to capture the ocean in a teacup.
Wow. It's not a place we go to
Right.
or a reward. It's a state of being,
Hmm.
a freedom from clinging, from that constant yearning that
Yeah.
fuels our suffering.
Beautifully put. And the Buddha offers a practical guide to reach that state, the Eightfold Path.
The Eightfold Path.
It's not about blind faith, but about mindful living, cultivating wisdom and ethical conduct.
So the fourth noble truth,
Yeah.
the Eightfold Path, is the bridge between understanding dukkha and reaching nirvana.
Precisely. And it's not a set of rigid rules, but a way of life aimed at cultivating inner peace and compassion. It is a path that unfolds step by step, breath by breath.
And speaking of breath, the Plum Village article highlights mindfulness
Right.
as a core part of Buddhist practice,
Uh-huh.
a way to experience peace. not just during meditation,
Yeah.
but in everyday life.
Right. Mindfulness is about bringing your attention to the present moment, becoming aware of your breath, your body, your surroundings, letting go of the past and the future, and simply being present.
The article gives practical examples: mindful breathing, walking meditation, eating meditation, even resting meditation. It's like any activity can become a doorway to peace if we approach it with awareness.
What's powerful about this approach is that it doesn't require drastic life changes. It's about bringing a quality of attention to what we already do, transforming the mundane into something sacred.
It makes me think of Thich Nhat Hanh's words. Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. That level of presence, of appreciation for the simple things, that's what mindfulness cultivates.
Beautifully said. And that presence, that awareness, becomes the antidote to the constant striving and yearning that fuels so much of our suffering.
You know, it strikes me that there's a connection between Buddhist teachings and Brené Brown's work on vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
Both emphasize the importance of embracing the difficult parts of life.
That's an interesting parallel. What specifically stands out to you?
Well, Brown found that people who numb their vulnerability also numb their capacity for joy and connection. They end up in a cycle of searching for meaning, but blocking themselves from experiencing it.
It makes sense when we connect it to Buddhist teachings. Trying to avoid the difficult parts of life, including our vulnerability, prevents us from experiencing life fully, both the joys and the sorrows.
It's like by choosing to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
even when it's uncomfortable, we open ourselves to a more authentic experience of life, just as the Buddha taught.
That's a powerful takeaway, and one that's worth reflecting on deeply. Where in your life, listener, are you numbing yourself to vulnerability? What might become possible if you allowed yourself to feel it fully, to embrace it as part of the human experience?
It's interesting, going deeper into these Buddhist texts, I'm realizing the path to overcoming suffering isn't about becoming emotionless or detached.
Right.
It's about cultivating a different relationship with our emotions, one based on understanding and compassion, rather than fear and avoidance.
Exactly. Thich Nhat Hanh speaks to this beautifully.
Yeah.
He says, instead of pushing away our suffering, we should embrace it, cherish it. He encourages us to go to the Buddha, not literally, but to that place of inner wisdom and sit with our pain, show it compassion.
It's like befriending our suffering, rather than fighting it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And he goes on to say that when we approach suffering with understanding and compassion, we begin to heal the wounds in our hearts, and in turn contribute to the healing of the world.
There's that interconnectedness again, the idea that our individual well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others.
It's a core principle of Buddhism, that sense of interconnectedness, of interdependence. And it's reflected in the Buddha's very first teaching after his enlightenment.
You're talking about the first Dharma talk, the one he gave to the 5 ascetics in the deer park.
Precisely. He didn't start with a complex metaphysical discourse. He began with the 4 noble truths.
Right.
These fundamental truths about suffering and the path to its cessation. As Thich Nhat Hanh points out, this teaching was relevant then, is relevant now, and will likely remain relevant for centuries to come.
It speaks to the timelessness of these teachings, their ability to address the core of human experience across cultures and eras.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that the Buddha delivered this teaching with joy and hope.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't just pointing out the problem. He was offering a way out, a path to liberation.
Speaking of paths, let's go back to the Eightfold Path.
Okay.
We touched on it briefly, but it's worth exploring each element in more detail. The YouTube video emphasized that it's not about blindly following rules. It's about developing wisdom and cultivating a way of life that leads to less suffering.
And that's where right view comes in. The first element of the path. It's about seeing things clearly, recognizing the true nature of reality, not being fooled by our own delusions or by the illusions of the world around us.
So right view is like laying the foundation for everything that follows.
It is. And once we have that foundation, that clear seeing, then we can move to right intention setting our intentions, our goals, our motivations in alignment with that understanding.
Ensuring that our actions are driven by wholesome intentions,
Yeah.
rather than by greed, hatred, or delusion.
Exactly. And from right intention, we naturally flow into right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These elements focus on cultivating ethical conduct, in our words, our actions and how we earn a living.
It's about living in a way that benefits not just ourselves, but all beings.
Right. And the final 3 elements, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, are about training the mind.
This is where the practice of meditation comes into play, isn't it?
It is. Right effort is about cultivating wholesome mental states and letting go of unwholesome ones. Right Mindfulness is about being present in each moment, aware of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. And right concentration is about developing the ability to focus our attention and cultivate deeper states of meditative awareness.
So in a way, these last three elements are about mastering the mind. So it doesn't master us.
That's a great way to put it. It's about cultivating a mind that's calm, clear, and capable of seeing things as they truly are.
And that kind of mental mastery is essential for navigating life's complexities and for cultivating wisdom and compassion. It's like we can have the right views and intentions, but if our mind is constantly distracted or clouded by negative emotions, we'll never fully realize the path's true potential.
So true. The Buddha often compared the untrained mind to a wild elephant.
A wild elephant.
Powerful but unpredictable and potentially destructive. Through meditation, we learn to tame that wild elephant.
To tame it.
To train it so that it becomes a source of strength and wisdom.
And that brings us back to the Plum Village tradition and their emphasis on mindfulness in everyday life. They offer so many beautiful practices for bringing mindfulness into our daily activities: walking meditation, eating meditation, even resting meditation. It's like every moment can become an opportunity for practice.
And that's the beauty of mindfulness. It's accessibility. We don't need to retreat to a cave or a monastery to practice it. We can integrate it into our lives, right here, right now.
Right here, right now. I love that. It reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings on interbeing, the idea that nothing exists in isolation.
Yeah.
Everything is interconnected and interdependent.
Exactly. Mindfulness allows us to experience that interbeing directly. When we're truly present, we see the interconnectedness of all things, the way our actions impact others, the way our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of the planet.
It's a profound shift in perspective, and it leads to a sense of responsibility, of care for ourselves, for others, and for the world around us.
It does, and that sense of responsibility, that care, that compassion, it becomes the driving force behind right action and right livelihood. We start to make choices that are aligned, not just with our own well-being, but with the well-being of all beings.
It's amazing how all of these teachings and practices weave together so seamlessly. It's like a tapestry, with each thread contributing to the beauty and strength of the whole.
It is, and that's the power of the Buddhist teachings, their depth, their interconnectedness, and their ability to guide us toward a life that's truly free from suffering.
But the path isn't always easy, is it? Even with the right views, intentions, and practices, we're still human. We make mistakes. We get caught up in our desires and delusions.
That's true. The Buddha himself acknowledged that the path to enlightenment is like walking a tightrope. It requires balance skill and unwavering determination. And even the most skilled tightrope walker can stumble from time to time. But the key is to not give up, to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get back on the path.
And that's where compassion comes in, both for ourselves and for others.
Absolutely. Compassion is the fuel that keeps us moving forward, even when we stumble. It allows us to forgive ourselves for our imperfections and to extend that same forgiveness to others.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, our shared vulnerability, and offering ourselves and others kindness and understanding along the way.
Beautifully said. And that compassion, that kindness, that understanding, it becomes the antidote to the self-judgment, the shame, the fear that so often keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering. It allows us to approach our own imperfections and the imperfections of others with a gentle and loving heart.
It reminds me of Brené Brown's research again. She found that people who are able to embrace vulnerability, who are willing to let themselves be seen, deeply seen, are the ones who experience the greatest joy, creativity, and connection in life.
It's a beautiful reminder that our vulnerability, our imperfections, those things we often try to hide, are actually the source of our greatest strengths.
It's like by opening ourselves up to the full spectrum of human experience, both the light and the dark, we unlock a depth and richness that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the heart of the Buddhist teachings, the invitation to embrace suffering, to see it clearly, and to transform it into something else, something more. It's an invitation to awaken to our true nature, to the inherent wisdom and compassion that reside within each of us.
And that awakening, that journey of transformation is one that we can embark on right here, right now, no matter where we are on our path.
It's a powerful message of hope. And it's one that's worth holding on to, especially in times of difficulty.
It is. So as we conclude this deep dive into the heart of Buddhist teachings, what can we take away, listener? How can we integrate these ancient truths into our modern lives?
The most important takeaway is that we don't have to be victims of our suffering. We have a choice. We can continue clinging to our desires, our aversions, our illusions of control, or we can choose to step onto the path of awakening, to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and mindfulness, and to transform our suffering into peace, joy, and liberation.
It's an invitation to live more consciously, more authentically, and more fully.
And that invitation is open to each and every one of us.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of Buddhist teachings. We hope it has inspired you to explore the transformative wisdom of the Buddhist teachings and to discover the boundless potential for peace and liberation that resides within each of us.